Give everybody a chance to make it back. Make sure the stream and everything is solid. Mic check 1, 2. Let me know that y'all can hear out there. I'm gonna give it like another 2-3 minutes so people can see the stream back on. For some reason, it's not sending notifications or anything. Grand Rising Pamela Hall. I am Flying Squirrel. Carrie Bay. Peace, peace. Give it another 60 seconds and we'll start from where we cut off at. Okay, we left off on just getting into their park rangers history, still on the Buffalo Soldiers and their history. There's another little known contribution of the Buffalo Soldiers involved 8 troops of the 9th Cavalry Regiment and 1 company of the 24th Infantry Regiment, who served in California's Sierra Nevada as some of the first national park rangers in 1899. Buffalo soldiers from the Company H, 24th Infantry Regiment briefly served in Yosemite National Park, Sequoia National Park, and General Grant Kings Canyon National Parks. Goes on to state U.S. Army regiments had been serving in these national parks since 1891. Hold on, let me repost this out here so anybody wants to read along with it. point. Sorry about that. I wanted to put the link back to everybody. All right, it comes to say on U.S. Army regiments had been serving in these national parks since 1891, but until 1899. The soldiers serving were white beginning in 1899 and continuing in 1903 and 1904. It says African American regiments served during the summer in the second and third oldest national parks in the United States, Sequoia and Yosemite. Because these soldiers served before the National Park Service was created in 1916, they were park rangers before the term was even coined. It says a lasting legacy of the soldiers as park rangers is the Ranger hat, properly known as the Smokey Bear hat. Although not officially adopted by the Army until 1911, distinctive hat crease called a Montana Pete or pinch can be seen being worn by several of the Buffalo Soldiers in park photographs dating back to 1899. Soldiers serving in the Spanish-American War began to receive the Stetson hat with a Montana pinch to better shed water from the torrential tropical rains. Many retained that distinctive crease upon their return to the U.S. The park photographers, in all likelihood, show Buffalo soldiers who were veterans from the 1898 war. Goes on to say one particular Buffalo soldier stands out in history, Captain Charles Young, who served with Troop in the 9th Cavalry Regiment in Sequoia National Park during the summer of 1903. Charles Young was the third African American to graduate from the United States Military Academy at the time of his death. He was the highest ranking African American in the U.S. military. He made history in Sequoia National Park in 1903 by becoming acting military superintendent of the Sequoia and General Grant National Parks. It says Charles Young was also the first African American superintendent of a national park. Just during Young's tenure in the park, he named a giant sequoia for Booker T. Washington. Recently, another giant sequoia in Grant and Giant Forest was named in Captain Young's honor. Some of Young's descendants were in attendance at the ceremony. Goes on to say, in 1903, the 9th Cavalry men in Sequoia built the first trail to the top of the Mount Whitney, the highest mountain in the contiguous United States. They also built the first wagon road into Sequoia's giant forest, the most famous grove of giant sequoia trees in Sequoia National Park. Further states in 1904, the 9th Cavalry men in Yosemite built an arboretum on the South Fork of the Mercedes River on the Merced River in southern section of the park. They had pathways and benches, and some plants were identified in both English and Latin. Yosemite Arboretum is considered to be the first museum. Arboretum is considered to be the first museum in the national parks. The NPS cites a 1904 report where Yosemite Superintendent Lieutenant Colonel John Bigelow Jr. declared to provide a great museum of nature for the general public free of cost. Unfortunately, the forces of developers, miners, and greed cut the boundaries of Yosemite in 1905. An arboretum was nearly destroyed. In the Sierra Nevada, the Buffalo Soldiers regularly enduring long days in the saddle, slim rotations, racism, and separation from family and friends as military stewards. It says the African American Cavalry and Infantry regiments protected the national parks from illegal grazing, poaching, timber thieves, and forest fires. Yosemite Park Ranger Shelton Johnson researched and interpreted the history in an attempt to recover and celebrate the contributions of the Buffalo Soldiers of Sierra Nevada. Goes on further into West Point history. It says on March 23rd, 1907, the United States Military Academy Detachment of Cavalry was changed to a color unit. This had been a long time coming. It had been proposed in 1897 at the Cavalry and Light Artillery School at Fort Riley, Kansas. The West Point cadets learned their riding skills from the black non-commissioned officers who were considered the best. The 100-man detachment from the 9th and the 10th Cavalry served to teach future officers at West Point riding instructions, mounted drills, and tactics until 1947. I'm going to reread this part again. It says at Fort Riley, Kansas, the West Point cadets learned their riding skills from the black non-commissioned officers who were considered the best. The 100-man detachment from the 9th and the 10th Cavalry served to teach future officers at West Point riding instructions, mounted drills, and tactics until 1947. Grand Rising Ladarian, Grand Rising TMH, Grand Rising LJ. It says John J. Pershing, General of the Armies. John J. Pershing is a controversial figure regarding the Buffalo Soldiers. He served with the 10th Cavalry Regiment from October 1895 to May 1897. He served again with them for under 6 months in Cuba. Because he saw them as real soldiers, he was locked down upon and called Nigger Jack by white cadets and officers at West Point. Only later, during the Spanish-American War, did the press changed that insulting term to Black Jack. During World War I, he bowed to the racial policies of President Woodrow Wilson, Secretary of War Newton D. Baker, and the Southern Democratic Party, with its separate but equal philosophy. For the first time in American history, Pershing was allowed soldiers to be under the command of a foreign power. So Pershing allowed American soldiers, such as African Americans, to be under the command of a foreign power. Pershing started as a first lieutenant when he took command of a troop of the 10th Cavalry in October 1895. In 1897, Pershing became an instructor at West Point, where he joined the tactical staff. While their cadets, upset over Pershing's harsh treatment and the high standards, took to calling him Nigger Jack in reference to his service with the 10th Cavalry Regiment. This was softened or sanitized to be more euphoric, Black Jack, by reporters covering Pershing's during the World War. At the start of the Spanish-American War, First Lieutenant Pershing was offered a brevet ranking and commissioned a major of volunteers on August 26, 1998. He was commissioned a major of volunteers on August 26, 1898. He fought with the 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers on Kettle and San Juan Hills in Cuba and was cited for gallantry. During World War I, Pershing was the Commander-in-Chief, C&C of the American Expedition Force, the AEF, on the Western Front. He had a full delegation of authority from President Wilson and Secretary of War Baker. Baker of the oldest problems of domestic and allied political involvement in military decisions making in wartime, gave Pershing unmatched authority to run his command as he saw fit. In turn, Pershing exercised his prerogative carefully, not engaging in issues that might distract or diminish his command. While early a champion of the African-American soldier, he did not defend their full participation on the battlefield, bowing to widespread racial attitudes among white Americans, plus Wilson's reactionary racial views and the political debts he owed to Southern, separate but equal Democratic lawmakers. So what y'all think about the information so far? Get some feedback from the chat real quick before we go further. Grand Rising Copper Color Queen, Grand Rising Macadam 1. All right, next part of the history, it says the punitive expedition. U.S.-Mexico border and World War I. It says the outbreak of the Mexican Revolution in 1910 against the longtime rule of President Porfirio Diaz initiated a decade-long period of high-intensity military conflict along the U.S.-Mexico border, as different political military fractions in Mexico fought for power. The access to arms and custom duties from the Mexican communities along the U.S.-Mexican border made border towns like Matamoros, Onagar, Chilachula, Nogales, Sonora, important strategic assets. As the various fractions in Mexico vied for power, the U.S. Army, including Buffalo Soldier units, was dispatched to the border to maintain security. The Buffalo Soldiers played a key role in the U.S.-Mexico relations as the maelstrom that followed the ousting of Diaz and assassination of his successor, Francisco Madero, intensified. It says by the late 1915s, the political fraction led by Venustiano Carranza received diplomatic recognition from the U.S. government as a legitimate ruling force in Mexico. Francisco Pancho Villa, who had previously courted U.S. recognition and thus felt betrayed, then attacked the rural community of Columbus, New Mexico, directly leading to further border tensions as U.S. President Woodrow Wilson unilaterally dispatched the punitive expedition into Mexico under General John Pershing to apprehend or kill Villa. The 9th and 10th Cavalries were deployed to Mexico along with the rest of Pershing's units. Although the manhunt against Villa was unsuccessful, small-scale confrontations in the communities at Peril and Causar nearly brought about a war between Mexico and the United States in the summer of 1916. Tensions cooled through diplomacy as they captured Buffalo Soldiers from Qatar were released. Despite the public outrage over Villa's Columbus raid, Wilson and his cadets felt that the U.S. attentions ought to be centered on Germany in World War I, not the apprehension of the Centro del Norte. The punitive expedition excited Mexico in early 1917, just before the U.S. declaration of war against Germany in April 1917. The Buffalo Soldiers did not participate with the American Expedition Forces, the AEF, during World War I, but experienced non-commissioned officers were provided to other segregated Black units for combat service, such as the 317th Engineering Battalion. The soldiers of the 92nd and 93rd non-commissioned officers, the soldiers of the 92nd and 93rd Infantry divisions were the first Americans to fight in France. The 4 regiments of the 93rd fought under French command for the duration of the war. On August 27, 1918, the 10th Cavalry supported the 35th Infantry Regiment in a border skirmish in the border towns of Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Sonora, between U.S. military forces, Mexican federal troops, and armed Mexican civilians militia, and the Battle of Ambos. This was the only incident in which German military advisors allegedly fought along with the Mexican soldiers against United States soldiers on the North soil during World War I. Goes on to say the Battle of Ambos. The 35th Infantry Regiment was stationed at Nogales, Arizona on April 27, 1918. When about 4:10 p.m., a gun battle erupted, unintentionally when a Mexican civilian attempted to pass through the border back to Mexico without being interrogated at the U.S. Customs House. After initial shooting, reinforcements from both sides rushed to the border. On the Mexican side, the majority of the belligerents were angry civilians upset with the killing of Mexican border crossers by the U.S. Army along the vaguely defined border between the two cities during the previous year. The U.S. Border Patrol did not exist until 1924. For the Americans, the reinforcements were the 10th Cavalry, off-duty 35th Regiment soldiers, and militia. Hostilities quickly escalated and several soldiers were killed, and others were wounded on both sides, including the mayor of Nogales, Sonora, Felix B. Pinzola, killed when waving a white truce flag handkerchief with his cane. A ceasefire was arranged later after the U.S. forces took heights south of Nogales, Arizona. Due in part to the heightened hysteria caused by World War I, allegations surfaced that the German agents fomented this violence and died fighting alongside Mexican troops that led U.S. newspaper reports in Nogales before August 27, 1918. Battle documented the departure of part of the Mexican garrison in Nogales, Sonora, to points south that August in an attempt to quell armed political rebels. Despite the Battle of Ambos, controversial, the presence of the Buffalo Soldiers in the community left a significant impact on the border town. The famed jazz musician Charles Mingus was born in Camp Stevens Little Military Base in Nogales in 1922, son of a Buffalo soldier. It says the African-American population centered on the stationing of Buffalo soldiers, such as the 25th Infantry, was a significant factor in the community. Though they often faced racial discrimination in the binational border community, in addition to racial segregation at the elementary school level, Grand Avenue Frank Reed School, a school reserved for Black children, it says, the redeployment of the Buffalo Soldiers to other areas and the closure of Camp Little in 1933 initiated the decline of the African-American community in Nogales. Moving forward in their history, it states World War II. Before World War II, the Black 25th Infantry Regiment was based at Fort Huachuca during the war, served as a home base of the Black 92nd and 93rd Infantry Divisions. The 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments were mostly disbanded, and the soldiers were moved into service-oriented units, along with the entire 2nd Cavalry Division, the 92nd Infantry Division. The Buffalo Division served in combat during the Italian campaign. The 93rd Infantry Division, including the 25th Infantry Regiment, served in the Pacific Theater. Separately, independent Black artillery, tank, and tank destroyer battalions, as well as quartermasters and support battalions, served in World War II. All of these units, to a degree, carried out traditions of Buffalo soldiers. Despite some official resistance and administration barriers, Black airmen were trained and played a part in the air war in Europe, gaining a reputation for skill and bravery. Tuskegee Airmen. In the early 1945, after the Battle of Bulge, American forces in Europe experienced a shortage of combat troops, so the embargo on using Black soldiers in combat units was relaxed, the American military history says. Stated from military history, faced with a shortage of infantry replacements during the enemy's counteroffensive, General Eisenhower offered Black soldiers and service units an opportunity to volunteer for duty with the infantry. More than 4,500 responded, many taking reductions in grade to meet specific requirements. The 6th Army Group formed these men into provisional companies, while the 12th Army Group employed them as an additional platoon in existing rifle companies. The excellent record established by these volunteers, particularly those serving as platoons, presaged major post-war changes in the traditional approach to employing Black troops. And that's World War II. Now it goes on to the Korean War and integration. It says in 1948, President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which desegregated which desegregated the military and marked the first federal piece of legislation that went against social norms, implementing through Jim Crow laws. During the Korean War, black and white troops operated and integrated units for the first time. The 24th Infantry Regiment saw combat during the Korean War and was the last segregated regiment to engage in combat. The 24th was deactivated in 1951, and its soldiers were integrated into other units in Korea. On December 12, 1951, the last Buffalo Soldier units, the 27th Cavalry and the 28th Horse Cavalry, were disbanded. The 28th Cavalry was inactive at Asa Aqaba Aldria in April 1944 in North Africa and marked the end of the regiment. So there you go again. You got Buffalo Soldiers fighting over there in Africa in 1944. Goes on to state, monuments to the Buffalo Soldiers are in Kansas at Fort Leavenworth and Junction City. Then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell, who initiated the project to get a statue to honor the Buffalo Soldiers when he was posted as the Brigadier General to Fort Leavenworth, was guest speaker for the unveiling of the Fort Leavenworth Monument in July 1992. Moving further down, it says controversy. In the last decade, the employment of the Buffalo Soldiers by the United States Army in the Indian Wars has led some to call for the critical reappraisal of the African American regiments in this viewpoint. The Buffalo Soldiers were used as mere shock troops or accessories to the forcible expansion goals of the U.S. government at the expense of the Native Americans and other minorities. That's what they got in the controversial part. And it lists the Medal of Honor recipients from 1866 to 1918. Edward L. Baker Jr., Dennis Bell, Thomas Bonin, Benjamin Brown, George Rutler Burnett, Lewis H. Carpenter, Potawatomi Henry Clark, John Denny, Pompey Factor, Clinton Greaves, Henry Johnson, George Jordan, Fitz Lee, Isaiah Mays, William McBriar, Adam Payne, Isaac Payne, Thomas Shaw, Emmanuel Stantz, Freddie Stowers, William H. Tompkins, Augustus Wiley, George H. Wanton, John Ward, Moses Williams, William Othello Wilson, and Brent Woods. Then they have a list of other notable who fought with the Buffalo Soldiers from 1866 to 1898. John Hanks Alexander, Allen Allensworth, Louis Borders, Henry Alsane Flipper, George B. Jackson, Edward W. Pearson Sr., and Charles. Moving back up towards the top of the article, where it says where they were formed. It said Buffalo Soldiers were members of the 10th Cavalry Regiment of the United States Army, formed on September 21st, 1866 at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The nickname was given to the Black Cavalry by Native American tribes who fought in the Indian Wars. The term eventually became synonymous with all of the African American regiments formed in 1866. So let's go in and start digging in. Hard hat, steel toe boots. We're checking the history on the 9th Cavalry Regiment. I'm going to post it in the chat for anyone who wants to have it or read along. It states the 9th Cavalry Regiment is a parent cavalry regiment of the United States. Historically, it was one of the few segregated African American regiments. The unit served in combat during the Indian and Spanish American Wars, during westward expansion. The unit provides security to the early Western settlers and the early American borders against Indian bands, Mexican encroachment, and criminal elements. As of 2019, the 1st Battalion and 4th Squadron served with the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division as a combined arms battalion, and an armored recon squadron, respectively, while the 6th Squadron is the armored squadron of the 3rd Brigade Combat Team of the division. All 3 units are stationed at Fort Hood. Down into the formation of the 9th, it says the regiment was constituted on the 28th of July, 1866, in the regular army as the 9th Cavalry. On the 3rd of August, 1866, Major General Philip H. Sheridan, commanding the military division of the Gulf, was authorized to raise, among others, 1 regiment of colored cavalry to be designated to the 9th Regiment of the U.S. Cavalry. The regiment was organized on the 21st of September, 1866 in New Orleans, Louisiana, and mustered between September 1866 and March 31st, 1867. Its first commanding officer was Colonel Edward Hatch. The men enlisted for 5 years and received $13 per month, plus room, board, and clothing. Later, they were dubbed Buffalo Soldiers. The regiment's motto was and remains, "We can, we will." Obtained from New Orleans and its vicinities. It says the mustering organized by My Francis Moore. The 65th U.S. Colored Infantry formed the nucleus of the enlisted strength and was obtained from New Orleans and its vicinity in the autumn of 1866. Recruiting began in Kentucky, and all the men of the 9th were obtained from that state and Louisiana. The horses were obtained at St. Louis, Missouri. About the middle of September, all recruits were assembled in New Orleans, where empty cotton presses were used as barracks. An epidemic of cholera was caused. 29 soldiers' death between October and December, with 46 other soldiers deserting by the end of March 1867. The camp was moved to Clarendon, a suburb of New Orleans. Officers' positions did not begin to be fully staffed until February 1867. By the end of March 1867, the 9th Cavalry was at nearly full strength with a total of 885 enlisted men, on an average of over 70 to a troop, and was ordered to San Antonio, Texas, where it arrived early in April for 3 months of training. However, troops L and M were directly to their duty stations at Brownsville, Texas. It says in April 1867, violent altercations between officers and soldiers occurred in Lieutenant Edward Hayes' Troop E and Lieutenant Fred Smith Troop K near San Antonio. As a result of poor morale and poor leadership, Sergeant Harrison Bedford and Lieutenant Seth E. Griffin died, and 10 soldiers deserted from E Troop. The soldiers at this point still had not been introduced to the Articles of War and so 2 soldiers convicted to death were pardoned and restored to duty. It says service. Indian Wars. In July 1867, the 9th Cavalry was ordered to the western and southwestern Texas to maintain law and order between the Rio Grande and Concho rivers along a 630-mile line with 7 forts from Fort Clark to Fort Quitman near present-day El Paso. The forts ended up including Fort Quitman, Fort Davis, Fort Stockman, Fort Lancaster, Fort Clark, Fort Duncan, Fort McCabe, and Fort Concho. Regimental headquarters and troops A, B, E, and K under Colonel Hatch were stationed at Fort Stockton. Troops C, D, F, G, and H, and I under Lieutenant Colonel Wesley Moret were at Fort Davis. Troops L and M under First Lieutenant Hamilton had previously been sent to Brownsville. The 9th remained in Texas for 8 years, nearly all of it in the field. While in Texas, the troops battled with Apaches, Kiowas, Comanches, escorted mail, rescued civilians from native populations. On December 26, 1867, K Troop lost 3 troops at Fort Lancaster by an estimated force of 900 natives and outlaws. The regiment went to New Mexico's military district, which covered parts of New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas, and participated in the Apache Wars from 1875 to 1881. Headquarters were at Fort Union while in New Mexico. Duties included constructing barracks and stables, caring for the horse herds, scouting for hostile natives, escorting the mail, surveying uncharted land, and constructing roads. The services also included the Battle of Tuscarora, with the Apache Wars led by Victor in May 1880. Since the 9th Cavalry was transferred to Fort Riley, Kansas in 1881 and to Fort Robinson, Nebraska in 1885. On the 5th of November 1887, Company H of the 9th Cavalry fought at the Battle of Crow Agency during the Crow War at Crow Agency, Montana. The regiment was also patrolled during the Ghost Dance War with the Sioux around the time of the Wounded Knee Massacre, and was the last regiment to leave the Pine Ridge Reservation in the winter of 1890 to 1891 following the massacre. To see what the chat and the relatives are thinking about this so far. Check the chat. All right, now we're moving down to the history of the Buffalo Soldiers with the 9th Regiment dealing with the Spanish-American War through World War I. It says in 1898, the 9th U.S. Cavalry Regiment fought alongside Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders at the battles of Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill. Later, they served as an honor guard during his first visit to San Francisco. In 1899 and again in 1904, the 9th Cavalry patrolled Yosemite National Park, joining other cavalry and infantry as the first rangers of the park system. It says under General John J. Pearson, the regiment fought in a punitive expedition against Pancho Villa in Mexico in 1916. The regiment spent World War I in the Philippines from April 3rd, 1921 to October 11th, 1922. Brigadier General Edward Anderson commanded the regiment. On the 1st of March, 1933, the 9th Cavalry was assigned to the 3rd Cavalry Division. Goes on into West Point. On the 23rd of March, 1907, the United States Military Detached Cavalry was changed into a colored unit. This had been a long time coming and had been proposed in 1897 at the Cavalry and Light Artillery School at Fort Riley, Kansas. That West Point cadets learned their riding skills from the black non-commissioned officers who were considered among the best. It was just a repeat from the other one that goes down to World War II. The 9th Cavalry was relieved on the 10th of October, 1940 from its assignment to the 3rd Cavalry Division and transferred to the 2nd Cavalry Division for deployment in World War II. However, the regiment did not serve in that war as a unit. It was transferred to the Mediterranean to supply soldiers for other units. It was therefore inactive on March 7th, 1944 in North Africa. It says the Cold War. The regiment was redesignated as the 509th Tank Battalion on the 20th of October 1950 and relieved from its assignment to the 2nd Cavalry Division. The battalion was activated at Camp Polk, Louisiana on the 1st of November of that year and inactive at Fort Knox on the 10th of April 1956. The regiment was reorganized and redesigned as the 9th Cavalry on December 1st, 1957, becoming a parent regiment under the Combat Arms Regiment system. So the 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry, was assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division in Korea and activated on the 1st of November, 1957. From the 1st Cavalry Division, 16th Reconnaissance Company as the Division Reconnaissance Squadron, it became the 1st Squadron of the 9th Cavalry, 1 through 9 Cavalry on the 1st of September 1963, was transferred to Fort Benning on the 1st of July 1965 without personnel and equipment to become an experimental air cavalry unit. Reflagged from the 3rd Squadron, 17th Cavalry of the 11th Air Assault Division test, the former 1 through 9 Cavalry in Korea became the 4th Squadron, 7th Cavalry of the 2nd Infantry Division. Still in the Cold War, the 2nd Squadron, 9th Cavalry was assigned to the 9th Infantry Division at Fort Carson and activated on the 1st December 1957. So as a division squadron, it was transferred to the 24th Infantry Division and recognized in Europe on the 1st of July 1958, stationed at Augsburg. The squadron became the 2nd Squadron of the 9th Cavalry, 2nd through 9 on the 1st of September 1963. The 3rd Squadron, 9th Cavalry, was assigned to the Army Reserve and activated on April 6, 1959 at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As a divisional squadron of the 79th Infantry Division, the squadron was inactive there on the 28th of February, 1963, when the 79th was reduced to a headquarters. It was redesigned as Troop C, 9th Cavalry, and reactivated on the 1st of February, 1964 at Bristol. With the 157th Infantry Brigade, the troop was moved to Wilkes-Barre on 31st January 1956. The troop continued to serve with the 157th Infantry Brigade, merged until deactivation on the 20th of August 1995. The 4th Squadron, the 9th Cavalry, was assigned to the Army Reserve, activated on the 20th of March 1959 at Mansfield, Ohio. As a divisional squadron of the 83rd Infantry Division, the squadron became the 4th Squadron, 9th Cavalry, 4 through 9 Cavalry on April 15, 1963, but was inactive on the 31st of December 1965. On the 24th of November 1967, it was reactivated as a regular Army unit with the 6th Infantry Division at Fort Campbell. Since the 5th Squadron, the 9th Cavalry, 5 through 9 Cavalry, was activated on the 21st of December 1962 at Fort Ord. With the 194th Armored Brigade, the 5 through 9 Cavalry was inactive there on the 4th of January 1968. Redesignated as Troop E, the 9th Cavalry and simultaneously reactivated at Fort Ord as a non-divisional unit. and that's their service during the Cold War. Now it drops down to the Vietnam War. Air Cav. Then experimental 1 through 9 Air Cav ushered in a new era of combat called Air Assault. These teams were comprised of Aero Weapons Reds and Aero Scouts Whites and Aero Rifles Blue. Together, ground and air teams patrolled the Vietnam countryside in search of enemy. Once located, the infantry blues would insert and extract via a helicopter or foot to engage the enemy with support of their Aero Scouts and Aero Weapons. These teams earned the nickname Headhunters. This concept differed from the conventional frontline warfare typical in prior land warfare. During the Vietnam War, the 1st of the 9th Cavalry earned 3 Presidential Unit citations and 5 Valorous Unit citations. It was inactive on 26 February 1973. It was one of the last conventional units to leave Vietnam in 1971. As the 1st Cavalry Division began redeployment to the United States, Troop F, 9th Cavalry was formed from 1 platoon, each from the 1 through 8 Cavalry, 2 through 5 Cavalry, 1 through 12 Cavalry, and 1 through 7 Cavalry. These units operated independently of the 1 through 9 Cavalry. Troop F was inactive in Vietnam on February 26, 1973. A lot of wars these dudes been fighting in. Goes further down in the Vietnam War. It says the 2nd Squadron, 9th Cavalry, was assigned to the far end of the runways at Hunter Army Airfield under the command of Lieutenant J. Longhofer as an Air Cav unit. Under the 24th Infantry in 1977, D Troop under the leadership of Captain Malondo and Medal of Honor recipient Frank D. Miller attended the Jungle Operations Training Center program at Fort Sherman, Panama Canal, with 1 medic from the HHT. In 1977, the HHT, A Troop, B Troop were moved 40 miles away to Fort Stewart, where it was redesigned as an air and armored cavalry. D Troop renamed the HAAF during this time, while D Troop maintained the rotary wings, aircraft, and cavalry recon scouts, air mobile, Air Assault Group. A Troop was given APCs, armored personal carriers, and B Troop had many of the larger track vehicles. HHT had APCs for the medical section and S1s and S3s. The medics continued to maintain 2 Gamma Groves, but received 2 new APCs, 1 577 command track, and 113 ambulance. Next in the history, it says return to Fort Hood, Texas. It says after Vietnam, the squadron returned to Fort Hood, Texas with the rest of the 1st Cavalry Division and served as Divisional Recon Squadron unit. Served as Divisional Recon Squadron until the 16th of October, 1986, when it was inactive. On the 25th November 1992, the 1st Squadron 9th Cavalry was reactivated, reorganized as a mechanized infantry battalion, redesigned as the 1st Battalion 9th Cavalry, and assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division as part of the 3rd Brigade. The next tour duty was Operation Just Cause Panama. The 2nd Squadron 9th Cavalry, assigned to the 7th Infantry Division Light, deployed to Panama December 20th, 1989 through January 31st, 1990, in order to conduct combat operations during Operation Just Cause and ensuring humanitarian and national building missions, Operation Promote Liberty. The air troops were the first to deploy with their AH-1 Cobra attack helicopters and their OH-59s and OH-58 Kiowas. Aerial scout helicopters. D Troop 2 through 9th Cavalry soon followed and conducted route clearance zone recon and provided support to the U.S. Army units in the interior. The D, 2nd Squadron, 9th Cavalry was stationed in Warner, Karlsruhe, Munich, Germany, 1962 to 1968, and reinforced to Fort Riley, Kansas in 1968. Next engagement, Desert Peacekeepers and Beyond. It states the 1st Battalion, 9th Cavalry, was reconstructed as an infantry from the highly decorated Persian Gulf War. Unit 3 through 41. Infantry of the 2nd Armored Division in 1992 and assigned to the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Cavalry Division. It served in combat as 3 through 41 Infantry of the Tiger Brigade in Operation Desert Storm. As a side note, the 3rd Brigade was led by then Colonel George Casey Jr., and the 1st Cavalry Division was led by future Democratic presidential candidate General Wesley Clark Sr. 1 through 9 Cavalry was a rapidly deployable infantry unit of action which deployed abroad several times in a decade to thwart aggressive and hostile maneuvers of the Iraqi army. Most notable in Operation Action in Iris Gold, 1 through 9 Cavalry was designated as the Military Operations in Urban Terrain, MOUT, unit of the 1st Cavalry Division. Following is a brief rendition of significant events during this time period. Since 1993, 3 soldiers killed on Lone Star North Range. NTC deployment, the action and deployment of Southwest Asia, Operation Iris Gold combat patch authorized. 1994, Claymore Mine accidentally severely injured a 1st lieutenant from Company A. This is Canberra Patrol, Special Operations, Competitive Patrol in England, set range live fire record, Company E. 2 soldiers from Company E was killed. It says in 1995, 2 soldiers from HHC killed, soldier injured by grenade blast at a tire house. 1996, action deployment to Southwest Asia.
Mic check.
Mic check 1, 2.
All right. Got it. Okay. All right. Mic work.
Going down to the 21st century. It says, today, the units of the 9th United States Cavalry Regiment provided RSTA, recon, surveillance, and target acquisition, capabilities forward of enemy lines, and supply infantrymen as sniper, long-range surveillance teams for the use of special recon in the area of combat operations. These small Army recon units provide valuable real-time intelligence about an enemy nation, including its leaders, combat capabilities, etc. Gathered intelligent information is fed into various intelligence agencies, assets, and databases, including the National Target Base. The 9th United States Cavalry Unit fought against both the armed conventional and unconventional enemies in the decade-long global war on terror in both the Afghanistan and Iraqi theaters. They developed and tested many new military doctrines and tactics when searching for, locating, observing, and destroying insurgent enemies and their war-fighting assets, just as they had during the Indian, Spanish, American, and Vietnam Wars. The unit has received numerous presidential unit citations and valorous unit awards, as well as decorations for individual valor, have been awarded to the 9th United States Cavalry Regiment and her combat soldiers. What you think so far, No Sellout? What you got to say about this?
Oh, my bad. I was trying to find a mute button. No, it's very interesting. I mean, all this stuff was documented and logged. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to me so far it's just amazing that these dudes fighting everywhere. That up to current time that they were still using the Buffalo Soldiers.
Yeah, the time is kind of kind of wild. I thought that was just some old school stuff, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, they fought in the current wars. But then
Yeah,
it makes you rethink. It makes me rethink when they saying they doing all the recon, the snipers. Then when you see 100 of them trained everybody else how to ride horses and combat skills. So I'm like, hold on now. Who are these so-called African Americans again? That knew the land over here, that can track anybody down, find you. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute.
well, man, that's, where did you gain this knowledge from? Seriously, I wonder.
Just touching on it real quick. They quick to tell you they were former slaves or freed slaves. But my thing is this: you're gonna give these people loaded weapons and guns after the so-called mistreatment that you did to these people and their relatives. I mean, there's too many holes in these stories. There's too many holes in his history. Too many.
Got a whole lot.
Now, when you read that the Buffalo Soldiers, they went on to be tank brigadiers and stuff. I'm like, hold on. Well, we know about the Tuskegee Airmen, but I never knew that they came from out of the Buffalo Soldiers. That's the part that got me this, Roger. Like, hold on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I'm gonna say again, you're supposed to be worth less than an animal, not a human being. But then again, they put you in a situation to train others just like you to be elite soldiers. And everybody stayed. It's just like when they went to Africa. You come to find out the Buffalo Soldiers over there fighting in Africa. So if they're African Americans, why would they come back here? I mean, just questions that be forming in my head as we go through this information that you trying to tell me you kidnapped me, brought me over to this country, made me your slave, tricked me or taught me to be your killing machine. You're going to send me back to my so-called mother country. I'm going to fight people over there, and I'm going to come back. Really? That they know all the ways the Buffalo Soldiers can get around every place on this landmass, but had no idea where to run to in so-called Africa, which was supposed to be their mother country. Let's think about this for a second. They can escort the mail, escort settlers, chase down runaway Indians. They can do all this on this landmass, but they can go over there fight in Africa and don't know how to get no place. Just let that marinate, because that was another mind blowing so far, where we read that the Buffalo Soldiers, they were your first park rangers. So these people knew how to go through. They built the roads through the Sequoia National Parks. They built all the roads and walk paths that you know today through these national parks. How did they know where they were going? Not only did you read it, they were scouts and land surveyors. How are you scouting and surveying land that's foreign to you? I'll wait. It's a whole lot of things that really make you think.
Yeah. Free said, I have a Tuskegee Airman in my tree, so I guess it's now fair to say I have a Buffalo Soldier in my lineage. Didn't realize that before today.
And like I said, there's some things to really think about. Just off of what we went, and we're just into the 9th Regiment. Breaking down the history, there's still a lot more. But it just seems odd to me that you would say, after the Civil War and all these racial tensions, that you're going to put full melanated regiments together and they go along with it. I mean, they go along with it. Too many holes left in this story. Then some people tell you that they were forced to fight, but we read that they were getting $13 a month, room and board, being taken care of. That don't sound like, slave to me.
Not the way I heard slaves get treated.
Now, I'm going to enslave you, make you pick cotton and peas and stuff in the field. But now I'm going to give you a gun, a horse, and some knives, and I'm going to pay you. Huh?
I guess times is changing. Huh?
And not to mention, they rode off on the horses and came back. I said there's a lot to think about on it. Let's go on to Troop B. It says Troop B, known as the Bloody Knife. 9th Cavalry, 3rd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division was deployed from Fort Carson, Colorado to Iraq in April 2003. After arriving at Camp Wolf, Kuwait, the unit moved to Camp New Jersey in the northern Kuwait. The lead elements of the brigade, recon troops, BRT, then crossed into Iraq, covering a distance of over 300 kilometers. This combat operation was the first for the 4th Infantry Division since Vietnam. The BRT has operated in Samarra East Airfield, Samarra, at Dwar, Tikrit East, Tuz Kamat, Jula, Meek, Dakor, Kirk, Taza, Koramet, Al Hawa, Adadur, Atatamia, Atadujla, and Bob South. On October 23rd, 2003, the soldiers of Troop B, 9th Cavalry, were issued their combat patches, e.g. the authorization to wear the division patch on the right shoulder, for conducting combat operations in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. The troop consisted of 2 platoons of scouts and 1 platoon of combat observation lasting teams. The unit deployed under the command of CPT William Sanchez and redeployed under the command of CPT Clinton Fuller. The Bloody Knife Troop became the quick reaction force for one of the largest logistic bases in Iraq, while still conducting operations wherever the brigade needed them. The Bloody Knife Troop was one of the last recon troops to fall directly under a brigade headquarters. Here you go, 2003, they still fighting. Goes down to the 1st Squadron. Says 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry Regiment. 1 through 9 Cav is stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, as an armored recon squadron on the 4th Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division, originally part of the 3rd BCT at Fort Hood. The 1st of the 9th moved to Fort Bliss to fill the RSTA, recon surveillance and target acquisition needs of the newly created 4th BCT in October 2005. The unit is nicknamed the Headhunters. The unit was featured as the command of LTC Kilgore in the movie Apocalypse Now. The 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry Regiment, 1 through 9 Cav, began deployment to Iraq in September 2003 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Headquarters and headquarters troops, HHT, and Troop C 1 through 9 calves were assigned an Army National Guard infantry unit. Company C, 1st Battalion, 153rd Infantry, ARNG, a combat engineer unit. Company A, 8th Engineers, a support team, 215, and a civil support unit to comprise tank forces 1 through 9. TF Headhunters, Companies A and B, 1 through 9 calves were assigned to other task force in Iraq, notably Task Force All-American, TFAA. During their first deployment, 124 Purple Heart medals were awarded to the task force, 1 through 9 soldiers who operated in one of the most dangerous sections of Iraq, including the 2004 battles of Sardar City and Haifa Street. In October 2006, the 1st Squadron 9th Cavalry Regiment began its second deployment to Iraq from Fort Bliss, Texas, in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, along with the rest of the 4th Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division, to work alongside units of the 25th Infantry Division to compromise tasks, force lightning, the area of operations for 1 through 9 Cav during the 06-08 OIF rotation, Mosul, Iraq, and the Neve Providence. After a 7-month duration of operations, 1 through 9 Cav conducted an intra-theater development from Mosul to Telafar, replacing 3/4 Cav for 8 months to complete a 15-month rotation. So the 2nd Squadron, 9th Cavalry, was stationed in Munich, Germany, 1963 to 1968. It was reassigned to Fort Riley, Kansas in 1968. During Operation Desert Storm, it served as the 24th Infantry's Division, Divisional Cavalry Squadron, and was based at Fort Stewart, Georgia. It was reflagged in 1996 to the 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry, with the 24th Infantry Division, was reflagged to the 3rd Infantry Division. In 2003, it was reactivated at Fort Carson, Colorado as Troop B, 9th Cavalry, and served as the Brigadier Recon Troop of the 3rd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division, Operation Iraqi Freedom. As part on the conversation to modular brigade combat teams, Troop B was expanded back into an armored recon squadron to the 3rd Brigade. The squadron's nicknamed Hunters, deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, serving in 2 provinces. First in Salih al-Din, then Adwar, first as an attachment to the 3rd Brigade, 101st Airborne Division, and then in Dala with the rest of the 3rd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division, after handing over the base in Adwar to A. Gators, Battery 1st Battalion, 319th Field Artillery Regiment of the 3rd BCT, 82nd Airborne Division, and the Iraq Army. The 2nd Squadron was inactive on the 18th of October 2007 and reflagged at the 4th Squadron, 10th Cavalry Regiment, 4th 10th Cavalry. Again, still fighting. Any input on what we've been going through so far this Rising No Sellout?
All I gotta say is we everywhere. We out here.
Like I said, we said it was going to get interesting and deep, and this is just the 9th Squadron, or the 9th Infantry Regiment dealing with the Buffalo Soldiers. And we can finish, it look like we can finish the 9th, let's see. It says the 4th Squadron. The 4th Squadron, 9th Cavalry Dark Horse is stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and is armored squadron for the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division. During Operation Iraqi Freedom 06 to 08, the Dark Horse deployed with Blackjack to Baghdad, Iraq, where it secured the international zone, the area of central Baghdad that is home to the U.S. Embassy, Iraqi Council of Representatives, and numerous other Iraq and coalition government officials. The squadron's responsibility was later expanded to conduct counterinsurgents operations throughout the Kark district. It says in 2009, the squadron again deployed to Iraq, this time to Kirkuk, Providence for the OIF 09 to 010, where it was responsible for the security, stability, and reconstruction of Darfur district and the Tazar, Lion, and Rashad sub-districts. The squadron partnered with the 15th Iraqi Army Brigade and Iraq Police from each of its districts to conduct area security and stability operations for an operating environment of over 3,000 square kilometers. The squadron also helped to balance ethnic tensions through the training and equipping Iraqi security forces, improvement of essential services, and the support and promotion of legitimate government. Goes on to state, in 2011, the squadron deployed a third time to Iraq in support of Operation New Dawn. It says in 2013, the squadron deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And in 2017, the squadron deployed to the Republic of South Korea and will be the last squadron to occupy Camp Casey and Camp Hovey. It's 2017, they still moving Buffalo soldiers across the globe. It says the 5th Squadron, 9th Cavalry, was reconstituted as Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, with headquarters at Woodlawn Army Airfield. Its motto is "We Can, We Will." The unit consisted of one ground troop A, 2 air troops B and C. Each air troop consisted of a scout platoon flying the OH-58A plus Kiowa and a gun platoon flying the AH-1 Cobra. The squadron also had a UH-1 Huey, 5 Battalion, 9th Cavalry Regiment, reflagged to become the 3rd Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment in 1996. Says the 6th Squadron. The 6th Squadron, 9th Cavalry, is assigned to the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division, and is stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. The 6th Squadron was redesignated on the 17th of October 2005 from Troop F. The 3rd Brigade's Recon Troop of OIF the 2nd reactivated at Fort Hood on the 17th of April 2003. The unit is nicknamed the Sabre Squadron. Coincidentally, the unit replaced the 2nd Squadron in Dala when it deployed in October 2006 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, 06 to 08, from which the last of the unit soldiers returned on the 18th of December 2007. 6 through 9 CAS is one of the last units to have left Iraq along with the 3rd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division on the 8th of December 2011. And it says the current status. 1st Squadron is a combined Arms Battalion. It says CAB in the 2nd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. The 4th Squadron is an Armored Recon Squadron of the 2nd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. The 6th Squadron is an Armored Squadron of 3rd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. So you see all of them are still stationed and active at these bases. And they say the notable members of this platoon is John H. Alexander. 2nd is State 2nd African-American graduate of West Point, commissioned in 1887. J. Franklin Bell, Chief of Staff of the Army. Thomas Boyney, Medal of Honor recipient. Sergeant Major of the Army, retired William Conley. Benjamin O. Davis, Sr., 1st African-American General Officer of the U.S. Army. This is Mathis W. Day Medal of Honor recipient. John Denny, Medal of Honor recipient. Robert Temple Emmett, Colonel of the Regiment and Medal of Honor recipient. LTJ Paul E. Funk, Commander of A Troop, 1970. Commanded the 3rd Armored Division in Desert Storm. Commanding General, the 3rd Corps in Fort Hood. Clinton Graves is the Medal of Honor recipient. Henry Johnson, Indian War Soldier, was a Medal of Honor recipient. George Jordan, Medal of Honor recipient. Thomas Shaw, Medal of Honor recipient. General Retired Robert M. Shoemaker. Emmanuel Stantz, Medal of Honor recipient. Captain John E. Swanson, B Troop 1 through 9 Air Cavalry, 1971. The only OH-68 pilot recipient of the Medal of Honor. Augustus Wiley, Medal of Honor recipient. Moses Williams, Medal of Honor recipient. Brent Woods, Medal of Honor recipient. Charles Young, 3rd African-American graduate of West Point Commission in 1889. And that there is just the intro into the Buffalo Soldiers. We were talking about one of the units that later on went to form them, and this is the 9th. And a lot of their history on what they did during the wars. And again, this is the 9th Cavalry Regiment, which later on starts becoming the Buffalo Soldiers. Any input you want to put on today's show so far? No sellout?
Yeah, I guess I was just surprised thinking that I knew what I knew about them, the Buffalo Soldiers, and I clearly didn't know nothing. I didn't know they was all the way, now. I mean, they're still, what is division? This what is it, this unit? Oh, my bad, I'm driving right now. Is still active in some cases in recent history, so
yeah,
it's crazy to hear that.
And like we said, this is just the 9th, so I can imagine what we find out tomorrow rising about the 10th.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
5th, then all the different companies.
It's like you don't hear nothing. You'd have to know some war history, some military history to know what's going on with them too. So if you're not interested in that, you wouldn't hear about some of this stuff. You got to go, dive a little deeper, or maybe your family member. If you see a family member that's in this, you would dive a little deeper. But for the normal person, I don't think they would be diving this deep into the Buffalo Soldiers. So yeah, we're about to find some stuff out.
Yeah, I would never even thought that they were snipers.
That's what I'm saying. I would think of them as scouts. I was just thinking that whole time that they were just scouts.
Yeah, what they said, they trained the soldiers. They were very proficient at horseback riding, which makes you think, how do these people are slaves? They got their freedom, but then riding horses, and they can train everybody else to ride the horse. They know how to shoot. They had aim, so they teaching people how to shoot and how to fight. I'm like, hold on 1 minute.
They must have been downloading software or something. I don't know.
Oh, we know they didn't need training. They already had the training, Golden Moon. All them Indian wars before they switched over to the U.S. side. That's why you read how some of them never even went to training. Time they formed, they put them right in the line of fire because they've been fighting their whole life over here already. Fighting this invader, this colonizer, that colonizer. So, yeah, they were already proficient. Not to mention fighting each other before anybody else came around. So, yeah. Any closing remarks? No sellout or?
Nope. Appreciate everybody for coming out today. Check the website out. If you need any help with your genealogy, I'll be posting links in the chat.
On that note, like we always said, it's always enjoyable when we get to kick it with the relatives. No other place we'd rather choose to be this Monday rising. So to all the relatives, have a very, very blessed day. Until we link up again on tomorrow's Rising Show, peace.
Peace, y'all.